What is going on YouTube? It is Primitive here, and today I'm going to be bringing you a pretty requested video, which is going to be an updated Gabumon deck list for BT16/EX6. Obviously, I topped with it in BT15, and ever since then, people have been wanting to see what I've been using in BT16/EX6, so I'm just going to be bringing you a deck profile today, so that way if you want to play Gabumon, you have a nice start. So let's go ahead and get on into the list. So starting out with Digitama, nothing has changed from the previous list. We were just playing the 4 Wanya and the 1 Buka. I think these are the best 5 eggs to play. The jamming is very nice. Honestly, even if I could play more Bukamon, I still might prefer the Wanyamon just because the draw is so important in this deck. Being able to see all your pieces is really big, but Wanya and Buka, you want to play 5 eggs because we're playing Uko Louie, so you're constantly going through eggs. I go through all 5 of my eggs. Probably more games than I don't, and so 5 is really big. I just think the Wanya Buka is the best. Now moving on into the rookies, we'll start off with our Gabumon. So we're going to start off with the 4 EX1 Gabu, which is arguably our most important Gabu because it allows you to search any Tamer or Digimon with Gabu in its name with the when attacking. So being able to play this with Lanamon, being able to get that search and just find your mats, so that way you can start to bond, or find your bond if you don't have it and you have mat, is very big. And then we got the BT15 Gabumon as a 4 of. Another very important Gabumon because it allows you to draw with the inheritable, but it also gives you a draw at the start of your turn if you control a mat. So being able to promote draw off the mat, you draw for turn, and then you can draw with the Gabu and then have the inheritable to draw, which also works with Lanamon very well, is very nice. And at start of turn it gives blocker, which can be pretty big. There's a lot of times where you just give this blocker and then you just block out, so that way you can save a check. It's no big deal. It's not the biggest thing to have blocker in this build, but it is it comes up pretty helpful sometimes, so I do like this at 4, but the main thing is we're playing these at 4 for the inheritables of being able to get more resources, so that way if you go for the Lanamon or if you bond on top or go for whatever you need to, you will get that surge. Then we're playing 3 of the BT6 Gabumon. Now I was playing 4 here, and the reason that we cut down to 2 is because I wanted to fit in the starter deck 8 Gabumon, which gives you all turns plus 1k if you have 8 or more cards in hand, which is almost all the time. I pretty much always have 8 cards in hand, so you're essentially getting a plus 1k DP here. Now this is very big for a couple reasons. One is being able to buff up to bond to 15k means that you're able to swing into security a lot more safely versus decks like Tyrant, who has that 14k, but just being able to have that buff and swinging, if you don't have jamming and swinging at 15k, does come up quite a bit. But the bigger reason is going to be for Togumogumon, which we will go over once we get to the champions. But being able to have the plus 1k was very important for this metagame, and like I said, we'll get into that a little bit more once we get into our champions. And then our final rookie is going to be 1 Ukomon. Now the 1 Ukomon probably seems really weird, and that's because it is. I was playing one of the new Ukomon here, so that way you could promote, search for your mats, or whatever you need, and it was just a big consistency card. But I really didn't like the 1 to Digivolve, and I didn't like that you don't gain memory like you do with this Ukomon. So very quickly the BT16 Ukomon didn't feel very good, and so I ended up just cutting it for this Ukomon, and it's felt a lot better. But the thing is that this one of Ukomon is strictly a flex spot. I like playing 14 rookies, but you don't necessarily need 14 Gabumon. You just need to be able to make sure you're finding things and raising the first 2 turns. So Ukomon is a card that will raise the ceiling of your deck, but not really the floor of the deck, just because you're able to have times where you're able to put this in raising, Louie out, promote, get a swing with Wanya, and then put a Gabu in the back, or you can just play this to pass turn, and the next turn you can promote Hatch. It just gives you some more aggression. It's not super needed. You could definitely cut this for another rookie. I would be cautious cutting it for anything else that's not a Gabumon. It's pretty much Gabumon and Ukomon are really the only rookies that fit very well into Gabumon. So the 1 of Ukomon, you can change this, but for now it's just a flex spot. I haven't really had a reason to cut it. Like I said, it raises the ceiling of the deck, so that way you have times where Ukomon can go really crazy, and then there's some times where it doesn't really do too much for you because you're already too far ahead. But these are going to be the rookies. I would stay at 14 rookies. I was testing 13, and 14 just feels to be the correct number for me, because you need to see that consistency of having Gabumon in the back, and you also need Gabumons in your hand, so that way when you Digivolve Lanamon, you have one to tuck underneath. So you go through rookies quite a bit more than you normally would with just the Digivolve in back, maybe hard play one. You go through rookies way more than a lot of normal decks, so 14 is just the way that I've liked it. Now to get on into the champions, we will have our standard hybrid lineup with 4 Lanamon and the 2 Korikakumon. Now Lanamon is just the glue of the deck. Being able to Digivolve, tuck a level 3 underneath, so that way you can get jamming is just very nice, because One, if you swing with jamming, then there's a higher chance the Lanamon will survive, so that way you can Zudo Ace on top of it later. But the main thing is that you can tuck a level 3 underneath, and when we have EX1 Gabu and the BT15 Gabu, you can get a ton of value out of this. You can even tuck the starter deck Gabu underneath here to put it at 5k, so that way you can get around like starter deck Rapidmon or Burning Greymon, things like that. But for the most part, you're trying to just like Digivolve this on top of a BT15 Gabu or an EX1 Gabu, tuck another Gabu underneath, swing jamming, and then you'll have multiple triggers to go underneath. So that way you can have more consistency, and then the jamming, so that way you can Zudo Ace on top. Now, we are playing 2 Korikakumon instead of something like Kumamon because the 6k threshold is actually really big. There's cards like the BT8 Rapidmon, or even just like Burning Greymon or the starter deck Rapidmon, which I just mentioned, which will delete 4ks or lower. And then BT8 Rapidmon will give minus 5k. And all the hybrids are pretty much at 4k, except for Lobomon, but Lobomon still gets the minus 5k. So the 6k is really what we're looking for here. So it's between this and Calamaramon. I prefer this because you are able to Digivolve for 2 over your Tamer still, as to where Calamaramon is 3. But for the most part, I don't think it really matters too much which one you go for between Korikaku and Calamaramon. I've just preferred Korikaku because the stun is very nice. When you go for Lanamon, you swing jamming, it survives, then you can go for 1, choke them at 1, and stun something that doesn't have sources. It's pretty nice, but for the most part, we're just looking for the 6k here. Another thing is like Ruin Mode. Ruin Mode will give minus 5k, which is really bad for us because everything is pretty much 5k or lower. So being able to go for a hybrid for 6k, and then being able to Zudo Ace over the Korikaku, so that way you can bounce the Shine Greymon Ruin Mode, so that way they can't just keep stunning you with minus 5k. The 6k is just really important. Which one you play between this and Calamaramon I don't think is that big of a deal, but I prefer Korikaku. And then to finish off the champions, we got 2 Togemogumon, who is busted, dummy, insane. This card has a lot of reasons why it's really good. And this is the other reason why we're playing starter deck 8, the Gabumon, is because Togemogumon, when your opponent suspends, it strips the top source of one of their Digimon, and then one of their Digimon with no sources can't attack or block. Now this is really big for things that are like Magna X and Rapid X, because when they swing, you are able to strip the top source, which a lot of the times is going to be their armor form, which means that they are going to lose their ability to either minus you with Rapidmon or gain invulnerability with Magnamon X. It also has Armor Purge, so it's pretty sticky on the board, so that way you can go in and just like swing in if you have a Gabumon and a Wani underneath, get the value, and then if it dies, you'll just Armor Purge, have a Gabu, and then they're going to have to answer that still. You're still going to have that body. And this is another card that's very sticky to be able to Zudomon Ace on top. So if your opponent swings and you have Togemogu on the board, you can strip their top source and then Zudo Ace to strip 2 more sources and bounce. So this is a very defensive card. It's very good versus things like Partition decks, because if they have the level 5 out and they swing, then a lot of times the top card that they're stripping is one of their level 4s, so Partition will go away. Or if they go into a level 6 and you strip the top source, then it's usually going to be the Partition card itself. So you can get rid of Partition. It's good versus Numamon to get rid of Numa X and slow down the Ukomons, because you'll be able to strip a source, stun something that doesn't have any sources so it can't attack or block, and then you have blockers so you can block. Togemogu is just very valuable for a lot of reasons. It's really good into the metagame. Ukomon, Partition decks, Magna X, really anything that needs sources, which is a lot of decks right now. Being able to threaten to strip one and then Zudo Ace on top, while also being able to have blockers so that way you can just defend, is very nice. It's good versus Magna X because not all the time you strip their armor form source, because if they go to like a level 5 or whatever, then they're going to have their level 4 be the source. So you can block here just so that way they don't get the checks through. They won't have protection, and then you can go for Zudo Ace or Howling Memory Boost or anything like that to get rid of their sources the next turn. So Togemogumon is just a very good card. It was a very strong card that was added in BT16. I think it's really good in most decks that play blue, maybe outside of like Mirage, just because Mirage has a different play style like that. But for the most part, this card is very strong. It works super well with Zudomon Ace, and it is something that just really helps with a lot of the weaknesses Gabumon can have in the current metagame, like the Pyldramon, the Magna X, and stuff like that. Just being able to strip sources, go to Zudo Ace, very nice. Now getting into the rest of our Digimon, we'll start with the 3 Zudo Ace, which I just mentioned multiple times. Zudo Ace, very strong. We have a ton of source strip in here, so you're able to consistently bounce with Zudo Ace, even if that's hard playing Zudo Ace using his effect to bounce, or using other cards like Howling Memory Boost or Sorajo to strip sources and then use Zudomon Ace, or the Togemogumon to Zudo Ace, stuff like that. This card is just super strong into the metagame. It does very good into any decks that really need their sources. The Partition decks, Numamon, it's even good versus versus Mirage. It can be good versus Devas. It's really good versus things like 7 Demon Lords or the Royal Knights. This card is just incredibly powerful, so there's no reason not to play it. And then we are playing the 1 Metal Garurumon. If you watched my last list, you know that I was playing a 1 of Metal Garurumon and Death X. I did cut the Metal Garurumon for a bit and went to play 2 Death X, but I'm back to the 1 Metal Garurumon just because there's a lot of times where this card is very good. Being able to warp up and being able to swing multiple times with Evade, or you give your BT-15 Gabumon gives a Digimon blocker, you give it to your Gabumon, you warp up with this, now you have a Metal Garurumon with blocker with Evade, so you're able to block. When it suspends, you unsuspend, and you can essentially double block with it. But another thing that I really like is that when I cut this, I noticed that there's a lot of times where Zudomon Ace would just be kind of naked on the board. You'd play it, and then at some point it's going to get overflowed. But if you Zudo Ace and then you're able to Metal Garurumon on top of it, you're going to have Evade, you're going to have ways to attack multiple times, and you're going to be much safer from overflowing on your opponent's end. So you're able to Zudomon Ace, kind of bounce stuff, and then the next turn you can Digivolve up, be a lot safer from overflow, and then stun 3 things on the board. So I do really like the Metal Garurumon. You could play 2 Death X over this just because it's really good into Numamon and does pretty decent into the armor decks and stuff. I just went back to the 1 Metal Garurumon because there's just a lot of times where the stun is very nice, the extra aggression is really nice, and it's honestly just, I can't understate how big of a deal it is making your Zudo Ace safer. It's just play this for 4, next turn Digivolve for 4, and then you have a really beefy Digimon on the board that's hard to deal with. Then 3 Bond of Friendship, nothing to say here. It is the reason we're playing the deck. We're only playing 3 because I always play 3. 4 is too much, 2 is too little. Just play 3. Nothing else to say about that. And then we have the 1 Death X, which, like I mentioned, I was playing it at 2 for a little bit, went back to the 1 Metal Garurumon, but Death X is a very strong tech. You draw so much with this deck that you, most of the time, are going to be seeing your 1-ofs unless they go into security. So seeing having 1 Death X and 1 Metal Garurumon, you still see them pretty consistently, and it's just such a strong tech card into the metagame right now that it was pretty much an auto add. I did like it at 2, but like I said, the Metal Garurumon just has a lot more versatility, so back to 1 and 1, but you could do 2 Death X. I probably wouldn't do 2 Metal Garurumon, but you can go 1-1 or 2 Death X here. Now to get into our Tamers, we're going to be playing 4 of the BT6 Mat. Auto include, you need this to warp up to your Bond. It gives you a ton of draw, a ton of memory. Your whole deck basically revolves around Mat and finding Mat early and playing it out. So obviously we're going to be playing 4 here. Then we're going to be playing 2 Sorijo. Sorijo is another strong strip card. Strip Sources is really strong in the current metagame. Like I said, there's a bunch of decks, Partition, Armor decks, Yellow Vaccine, Numamon, whatever. Stripping Source is very strong. Being able to tap Strip 2, and then at the start of your turn, if your opponent has no Digimon with has a Digimon with no sources, you gain 2 memory. So there's a lot of ways to force your opponent to have no sources. If they go up to like a level 6, level 7, you can strip down their sources, and then if they can't Digivolve up, you'll gain memory. There's a lot of decks that play Digimon off of effects, and so you can get Digimon off of that way. And then there's a lot of decks where they just kind of need to hard play things like rookies, so that way we can search out, and you can take advantage of that by gaining the 2 memory. You also have a lot of cool plays with Sorijo with the Bond of Friendship, like versus Partition decks. If one of their color sources, one of their level 4s, is the bottom 2, you can swing with Bond, tap Sorijo, strip 2 sources, and then use Gabumon's effect to bottom deck. And if you stripped away the level 4, they can't partition, and so you'd be able to strip the sources, bottom deck, no partition, and then their stack is gone. And then if you have 2 of these out and you're able to strip 4 sources a turn and you're playing against a deck that needs sources, a lot of the times you just kind of auto-win once the second one comes down because it's so hard for them to deal with. Decks like Tyrant, decks like Leomon, Numamon, all these decks really need sources, so just stripping sources and then gaining memory is really huge, and then you have another blue tamer to go on top with a hybrid if you need to. And then we're going to play 1 Davis. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Davis in this list. I was in between playing it and not playing it in BT15, but with the introduction of BT16, I found it to be a lot more useful for 2 reasons. One, we have Togumogumon in the list now, which means that we have a green Digimon, so I actually I wouldn't say super consistently, but a lot of times I will double hit off of Davis because we now have a green Digimon to hit with Togumogumon. But another reason why we want Davis is because there is a lot more Digimon Emperor in the current metagame than I feel like there was in the past. So being able to start at 3, and then you're going to have memory gain through Matt, Sorijo, and Louie. So you'll be able to more easily promote out a rookie, your Gabumon, and not pass turn if they have multiple Digimon Emperors. So Davis is a little bit more valuable now than I think it was in BT15. Speaking of Louie, we're going to be playing 3 of them. pretty much the same as last format. I saw no reason to change it. This card is super insane. Works really well with Matt because Matt's not a once per turn. So you could promote out if you hatch with Ukomon or Analog. Then you can put another Gabumon in back, Louis out, and then you'll draw again and gain memory again off of Matt. So these cards just work really well, but Louis is just very strong for getting a bunch of damage in. You can go from start a turn, hatch, have nothing, Digivolve a Gabumon, Louis, promote out, gain the memory from Louis and Matt and stuff, and then you can bond. So you can go from having nothing in raising to bonding your opponent just with the Louis, and then the more they stack up, the more memory you gain. And then the one Analog Youth is kind of a flex spot. I do really like it though. The search is nice, being able to reveal the top 3, grab whatever is cool. A lot of the times I usually end up searching out things like either a hybrid or Zudo Ace off of Analog, because Zudo Ace is a good card for specific situations, and then hybrids can go for game. But for the most part, you can search whatever you need off this. The main thing we're looking for here is when one of your level 5 or higher Digimon with sources is deleted, you can tap this to gain a memory, hatch an egg. So since Bond of Friendship's effect, he will die at the end of the turn. You can... There's a bunch of ways to gain memory to kind of choke your opponent to 1, or get a way to choke your opponent at 1. So then at the end of the turn, the Bond of Friendship will die. You'll tap Analog, gain a memory, hatch, go to 0. Then you can put a Gabumon in the back to then next turn promote and then threaten Bond again. Or you can just Louis out right there and then get more damage in. But it just allows you to essentially go Bond, clear your board, it dies, and then I'm going to have another rookie in the back, so that way next turn I can promote and then either swing it in and go for hybrids or go for another bond or whatever I need to do. So it just adds a lot of pressure. It kind of gets rid of that turn where you don't have anything in raising, and it can be a little awkward because then your opponent's going to start building up in raising or start playing stuff. Just keeps constant aggression all the time and makes your opponent play really weird when you go for bond and then to another Digimon in the back. So I really like the Analog Youth. I'd say it is a flex spot if you don't want to play it, but it is just so strong in the deck that I wouldn't cut it. And then to finish off the deck, we're going to be getting into the options. So we'll start off with the 3 Foxfire. Still as broken as it was in the past. Paying 4 to bounce your opponent's giant stack is super big, especially when a lot of people are playing ace cards. So essentially you can play this for 4. If you have a Gabumon, you bounce your Digimon with the lowest level. So if they just have something like a Valk Ace or whatever, you bounce it to hand and then you overflow 4. And so you get to play this essentially for free. So when pairing this with your things like Zudo Ace and Gabubond, which can clear a lot of your opponent's level 5 or lowers, being able to have something that clear your opponent's level 6 and 7s for really cheap is really big. It's just the complete package. I did consider cutting this down to 2 when we went into BT16. Did it for like 1 playtesting session and then just realized that Foxfire is like a 3 of must, because even if you aren't bouncing big stacks, just being able to bounce a level 4 or lower or a level 5 ace is still really big. So I do just play Foxfire 3. It's honestly one of the most broken option cards that's ever been printed in this game. And then we got 3 Howling Memory Boost. This card is just very powerful, being able to strip 2 sources and then delay gain 2 memory later. So when we're stripping a bunch of sources with Zudo Ace and all this stuff and Bond, you are able to Zudo Ace a lot more cleanly. And then there's just a lot, I've mentioned many times, there's so many sources that are strong in this metagame. Being able to just like play this on a Monzemon, strip their Numa X source, and now they can't attack. Well, that's very good, because now you got rid of their Numa X. You stopped 1 check of damage with this Howling Memory Boost, essentially, and you can gain 2 memory later for when you're going for your big hybrid turns or bond turns or whatever. I was playing it at 2, went up to 3, just because I feel like it's a lot stronger into Numamon, and with Numamon being a little bit... I don't know if it's like the same representation last format. I would say it's probably more represented this format than it was last format. So I like the 3 Howling Memory Boost. It's just really strong into a lot of decks, and even in the decks where it's not necessarily strong into, just being able to stun something for 1 turn, even if it's just a rookie, but having the delay 2 later is just really big. So I do like the Howling. More memory gain. We got 2 Hammer Sparks. I'm a big Hammer Spark fan. I'm not gonna cut it anytime soon. This is probably just the most flexible card that's ever been printed. Being able to gain 1 memory for free whenever means you can do offensive plays, you can do defensive plays, and you have the security of gain 2 memory. So just having the knowledge that this is in the deck means that there's times where you can go, oh, I'm in a really bad situation right here, but if they hit Hammer Spark or Ice Wall and security and they lose that 2 memory, you gain 2 memory, then you can pass turn and then win the game. It is just a thing where, like, obviously you shouldn't be playing your game plan around what could be in your security unless you're playing like SetCon, but when you get in situations where you got to play to your win con, and just knowing that this can be in your security itself is a win con. So this card's amazing in your hand and it's amazing in security, so I really like it. And then the last card of the deck is Ice Wall. Shout out Team Ice Wall. Nothing to say here. Always play Ice Wall. card's broken, especially with the analog. A lot of the times when I do the analog thing where I will bond, I'll go down to bond to 0, and then I'll ice wall, put them to 1, analog hatch, put something in the back, and then now not only do you have something in the back that can threaten them next turn, but they can't really go in because they're going to be at 1 memory and they're going to lose 2 memory when they attack. So Ice Wall is just really broken. Shout out Team Ice Wall. Let's get it. But that is going to be the deck. That is the updated BT16/EX6 Gabubond. I will be making a BT17 version with the Ancient Garurumon stuff when that does come out, so I'll make a list for that. But with that being said, I'm going to get on out of here. I hope you have a fantastic day. Peace out.